That's how today's profile looks. Stage 15 takes the race into Switzerland, into the Alps and over 5 mountain summits to finish at the 6th, the sharp climb up to Verbier at a little under 1,500 metres. Now, there are 2 riders who won't be tackling the Alps, Tom Vernon of Quick Step and Vladimir Efimkin of Rinaldo Nocentini's AG2R team. Both abandoned this morning, so that's 162 riders left in the race. And 10 of them very quickly out front on the stage.
We are 15 kilometres now from the summit as we're looking at Simon Spilak, the leader here. 15 kilometres, the last 9 are all uphill. It looks as though these boys are being caught. 2 minutes 21, here is the gap, and it looks as though the way these boys are going, Paul, they are throwing the towel in here. Just Simon Spilak up the road.
Well, I'm a bit surprised, Phil, because they were all working extremely well together, and now all of a sudden nobody wants to ride. And it just surprises me completely and utterly, just because one guy has jumped off the front of the main pack, why they can't get themselves organised and try and survive. And I'm sure it's quite frustrating to the man in the orange jersey there wearing number 61, Mikel Astrolosa, because a few moments ago he was looking at possibly tickling the yellow jersey. Now he may well not even get to the foot of the climb at the head of the race.
Well, they are going on the 15 kilometres to go. Spilak has gone under this gap and is moving clear by around about 1 minute at that 15 kilometres from this group. The peloton are about 1.25 minutes behind this group at the moment. Looks like they might be getting themselves a little bit organised as we've gone back up to the leader. This is Simon Spilak, who is now making his route. The man who was officially eliminated from the race, he finished 45 minutes behind the other day, but the judges took the unusual decision to let him back in. They said that he was hampered by cars being allowed onto the route. He was so far behind. They took a very unusual view, I must say, but he's back and he's now rewarding them with a chance of a win here. It's a slim chance, but it's a chance.
Well, it's nice that he's been able to pay back the referees by getting himself into the breakaway that's dominated today's stage and then riding off the front end of the group and leading by 1 minute. Liquigas, Phil, have done an awful lot of work, but I tell you what, you get an idea of how hard this race is when your heart rate starts to climb up like Brian Van Borg's to just inside of 170 beats a minute. You know that you're starting to get right onto the edge of the saddle, and the wattage is creeping up to the 400 watts mark, and that is very, very hard.
And of course, Van Borg is among the leaders here. He's on the Liquigas team, and he's having to put his heart and soul into the chase right now. 2 minutes 18 seconds the spread, and Cancellara here in the left red jersey, David Moncoutier, Pirik Fedrigo in the blue, and Astrolosa himself, because they're messing about, is trying to ride off the front, and now that's caused a flurry of action.
Well, he obviously was frustrated by the fact that nobody was prepared to do the pacemaking and work together in this group, and Ryder Hezjedal has seen that and said, well, if you guys don't want to work, I'm going across the gap as well. And Jürgen van den Broek says, me too.
Well, we'll see if this causes the reaction that they want to do and cut back in, because it seems a shame to throw it all to the wind now before they've actually started the climb, which is closing in. We're 4 kilometres from the town that takes us right onto the climb. This is Astrolosa now. Once he was in yellow, now he's out of it. Now he could do with the stage win for Euskaltel Euskadi.
They are scrambling, trying to get to the wheel here of Mikel Astrolosa. Looks like it's Jürgen van den Broek trying to get himself across the gap. Switching across the road there still. Ryder Hezjedal is trying to get onto the wheel of the Belgian. Hezjedal looks over his shoulder to see what sort of damage is being done, but Jürgen van den Broek, I think, is just about to make the junction. It's 2 minutes and 16 seconds is the difference between Spilak at the front of the race and this peloton here now. Different team has come to the front, and in fact it's going to be Team Milram setting the pacemaking. They're trying to set something up for Marcus Foten or Linus Gerdeman. It's Gerdeman sitting in 3rd position there. Dave Zabriskie over on the left-hand side. He is trying to pace his 2 men, Christian van der Velde and Bradley Wiggins, to be in the front positions once they start this final climb of the day.
Team Milram, that's unexpected perhaps a little bit, but they might be working here for Linus Gerdeman to see what he can do. And what's happened to all the Liquigas boys now, Paul? They've completely disappeared.
Well, they did the job that they wanted to. They wanted to bring that gap down as much as possible to give their men a chance to leap out of the pack and vie for the stage victory at the end of the day. quite a crowd turned out to watch the Tour de France in Switzerland.
They've built the grandstands here because we're getting desperately close now to the turn up into the mountain. You could just see Verbier. Actually, we're right up on the mountain there as the riders come up the valley. There's Martin Brun on the right-hand side of the road. He was the race referee that decided to relegate Mark Cavendish yesterday to the back of the field for apparently an irregular movement in the sprint. These are the leaders now of the Tour, and they're all in this group, and the first four separated by 8 seconds. We've never had such a close approach to the last week of the Tour de France. 4 men separated by 8 seconds.
Well, Phil, just looking down that line, you can see the damage that's being done. This is the group of the sprinters now starting to get tailed off. Torhush, Tyler Farah is right in there. Going further back as well, Muriev for the Team Astana. He's done his job of work here this afternoon. Bernard Eisel, the Austrian rider on Columbia HTC. This is the group of riders who today will just have to survive on the slopes of the climb.
Well, they should. They've got plenty of time. There is Mark Cavendish. He knew this would come. He's done it voluntarily. They'll just ride up together, lose time, yes, but they won't lose enough to be eliminated. There is no problems there. Daniela Benati, the other sprinter, was in there as well for Liquigas. So we're moving across the gap now. These riders are coming off slowly but surely. Well, the pressure's gone on before we've even got to the climb.
No, the climb doesn't even start, Phil, for another probably 3 or 4 kilometers. Number 21 in the turquoise jersey there, Alberto Contador. Sitting behind him with the black helmet on is Lance Armstrong. It's a different team on the front, but that could all very much change in the next couple of kilometers when we take that left-hand turn onto the early slopes of the climb. But I have to say that young man, Simon Spilak, is doing a phenomenal performance.
Well, Christian Nies has started to take pace at the front now, and this is interesting. Rabobank have moved right up to the front as well. I wonder if Denny Menchoff is feeling good today.
Well, he needs to do something special. He's a long way down in the overall classification. There is Mikel Astrolosa and Jürgen van den Broek. They're at 42 seconds. The rest of the group is at 55 seconds and 150 back to the main field.
Well, Jürgen van den Broek has gone up alongside Astrolosa. They're trying to find out the location of Simon Spilak. He's on his own up the road. They had to break away because the group was getting very disjointed. Here is the saddle of Spilak as we move up the road to find him. He is just nonplussed and getting on with it here and hoping that things go his way. A minute 50 the spread and still coming down. The peloton, I'm afraid, are coming back. At least some of them are.
Well, some of them are, yes, and here we're looking at these two riders trying to get across the gap to Simon Spilak. This is where the big race is going to take place, though, in the main field. It's moving up the outside there. There's a rider from Columbia HTC. It's Mick Rogers, in fact, trying to move his man Tony Martin into an ideal position. Pelizzotti in the polka dot jersey right at the front end there. His teammates have done a lot of work to reduce that gap, maybe to give him the chance of a victory. 10 kilometers to go now for Simon Spilak at the front of the race. These now are the chasers at around about 40 seconds. Mikel Astrolosa, Fabian Cancellara came across the gap, but Jürgen van den Broek is the other rider in there too. And the fourth rider to come across will be Perik Federigo of B-Box Bouygues Telecom. Looking back, they've actually picked up the pace quite an amount here, and they are now starting to eat into this man's advantage. But behind them, a group of around about 30 or 40 riders left in the main field are also starting to approach these men. 10 kilometers to go at 40 seconds behind the lone leader, Simon Spilak. Cancellara pushing onto the shoulders there of Jürgen van den Broek, saying, you go through, mate, I'm under a bit of pressure here. But they know how strong Cancellara can be over the final few kilometers of a race like this. The champion of Switzerland hoping that he's going to survive here this afternoon, but somehow I think we're going to be treated to a battle royale on the slopes of this ski resort to Verbier. So at 10 kilometers to go, this is what the race looks like. Spilak leading that second group there by 41 seconds. A little bit further back, you've got a group of 5 riders at around about 55 seconds. And then the main field at 1 minute and 40 being led here by Team Milram.
Open mouth, tremendous work being done here by Fabian Weckmann as he tries now, the former champion of Germany for the past 2 years, in fact, drives on, being swamped by Astana. And now the drive is on by Saxo Bank as well. They all want to hit this together. This is the approach now. This is the town. Just over the hill there, there's the start of the cable cars. 9 minutes by cable car. It's going to take about 25 minutes by bike.
It's going to take them a lot longer than the cable car. The left-hand bend is not too far away from here, Phil, as Simon Spilak knows that the main field will be charging up behind him. And I did notice that Team Saxo Bank were very attentive at the front end of that pack.
They're trying to launch Andy Schleck into a move today. Schleck needs to make up a little bit of time. Minute 49 down. There's the start, 8.7 kilometres. First man on is Simon Spilak. He was in the breakaway all day. He's got to be tired. These are the remnants of the breakaway. They're going to make the left turn next, but they're holding on at the moment. Ryder Hejerdal is the rider at the back.
He's just managed to come across the gap to join that group of 4 riders who are 40 seconds behind the lone leader here. Ryder Hejerdal must have turned himself inside out to get across that gap, but there'll be a few riders turning themselves inside out when they take this left-hand bend, because this is where the 8.7 kilometre ascent begins in earnest.
Yes, there we are. Now we're on it. Look at the people here of Switzerland and a number of other countries watching the riders here. Pierrick Fedrigo is in the light blue. Here comes the main field now, and it's going to be a crush at the front because the big contenders will want to make sure they are at the front of the pack.
Well, it's Garmin Slipstream seem to have got the control of the front end of the main field there, trying to get their men Christian van der Velde and, of course, Bradley Wiggins around the corner in first place, catching the remnants of the breakaway. This is David Miller on the front behind him. I'm looking to see if it is Bradley Wiggins. It is Wiggins, followed by Christian van der Velde.
Well, they've had a perfect start to the climb here. The Team Garmin Slipstream. David Miller looks over. That's his job done, as Bradley Wiggins is right there. Jens Voigt is there as well. So Carlos Sastre is also here, and Christian van der Velde. This is a race for the top now.
They are trying to set this up, Phil, for a big acceleration for the climbers, and there are so many climbers here with a chance of going out on the front. Big Jens Voigt from Germany hammering on those pedals. He's not worried about where anybody else is up in front of this race. He's trying to make it as tough as possible. Not far away there is Cadel Evans, sitting in about 7th or 8th position, but he's behind a long line of riders from Astana.
Big Jens Voigt here, banging out the rhythm on the front here now. He's trying to pave a way here for the Schleck brothers, perhaps, mainly for Andy. Watch out, though, Carlos Sastre is not too far down the line here. This is the back of the field now. The world champion, Alessandro Ballan, is going off the back. The polka dot jersey of Franco Pelazzotti is going off the back. So the Liquigas move must be for either Kreuziger or Nibali that we saw earlier on.
Absolutely, those riders know this climb. They're great climbers. Now you can see there was Andy Schleck a little bit further forward. These riders now are just hanging on to their shirt sleeves. They're trying to get rid of that man there in the yellow jersey. He's led this race since we left the Pyrenees behind. It seems like almost an eternity.
We have started to climb. We're looking at Jens Voigt setting up the pace here to try and launch Andy Schleck into an attack. Bradley Wiggins is riding like two men here. He's in the orange, the British rider. We never considered him as a climber. He's a track cyclist, and he's in a perfect position now.
Did you see the way Jens Voigt just swung off there? He'd done his job for 1.5 kilometres to make it extremely tough for everybody. He was trying to asphyxiate all of the opposition to try and set something up for his man Andy Schleck. These are the riders at the back end of the pack who today have just got to survive, leaving it up still to Team Saxo Bank to set the pace making on the front. Wiggins does not look ruffled at all. Over his shoulder there is Christian van der Velde, looking exceptionally calm and collected. Behind him is Andreas Claude, and behind him you can see the tricolor jersey of the champion of Luxembourg, Andy Schleck. Behind him it's Alberto Contador, and then Lance Armstrong.
Nicky Sorensen setting the pace here. A brilliant turn by the young man. He's got one stage win already. The USA flag's on the far side. Spilak will be unaware, but he'll know what's going on behind him now. He's continuing to blaze his lonely trail. He's about 26 seconds in front of what is coming up the mountain now. Fabian Cancellara is being picked up. He will see his Saxo Bank teammates now. Will he pick up the pace, or has he got nothing left in those legs?
Don't underestimate Fabian Cancellara. Looking over his shoulder, he will, even if it's only 200 metres or 300 metres, he will find something, Phil, in his legs to push it that little bit harder for his team, just to try and set something up for his man in that group, Andy Schleck.
Now a little move here away from the cross here as we start to, this is Hejerdal going back to the pack now. He's going to see some of his teammates have got themselves in the right position, in particular Bradley Wiggins. Lance Armstrong on the left there has climbed steadily through, and this is becoming a selection. There's about 12 riders here. Andy Schleck is one of them.
Well, I tell you what, Cancellara found something very special there, Phil, looking over his shoulder. He was trying to rip it up. He slowed down to wait for Sorensen to come back to his wheel. They have literally made the first selection of the bike race. Jürgen Vandenbroek is hoping to survive at 6.5 kilometers to go. Mikel Astrolosa is there, but the train behind is right on them. Well,
this is looking to me now as though the throws of the domestiques and then the leaders are going to have to take over. George Hincapie is here. He's being unshipped a little bit now, so he's in second place overall and beginning to fade away.
Well, Race Radio, Phil, is also saying that Carlos Sastre is in difficulty at the back of this group.
Well, we need pictures of that, but the cameras can't really get. Look at the face on Cancellara on the left of our picture. This is his final help for the team before he drops off the back. Fourth rider down is the man he wants to help, because that is Andy Schleck. Schleck is a very, very gifted climber. Christian van der Velde right there as well.
Van der Velde right up there in the front of this, but moving up into fourth position there is Andy Schleck, and Cancellara is all over the front end of this. He will push himself until he can't go anymore in an attempt to asphyxiate all of the other climbers. I think, Phil, we're just about reaching the point where Fabian Cancellara, in fact, he's still riding them off his wheel.
Well, they were trying to sort themselves out there, and the Astana boys nearly collided, but now Lance Armstrong has moved forward. Contador just dances right in the slipstream of Astana. The yellow jersey has gone. It's goodbye to the maillot jaune now for Nocentini as they start to drop back, and Nocentini riding behind Gomez there of Cervelo. But it looks now it's a big struggle. Now we go back to the front here. This is where the moves are about to come. And Frank is the one that's going to start the first move.
Well, Frank now is trying to set something up for his brother. But Cancellara, he's put it into reverse there, Phil. He dug himself so deep and then all of a sudden went out to the back. Contador straight across to Frank Schleck. Armstrong is still there. Andy Schleck is coming across too, still with Bradley Wiggins.
I don't even saw that, but Contador looked for where Lance Armstrong was there to see what was going on, and Armstrong immediately took it. He's number one. Here's Carlos Sastre. We found him now, and he's finding the pace and the speed they've hit this climb is hurting them. Now, who said the climb was easy?
This is not an easy climb, Phil. There we can see going around the corner Frank Schleck trying to set something up for his brother, but the two brothers from Team Astana here are Alberto Contador and Lance Armstrong. Contador looks so easy. He's looking around at everybody to wait and see if there's going to be an attack, and here's his move.
Well, there's the kick from Alberto Contador. Now Lance will not respond here. It's got to come from somebody like Andy Schleck. Schleck has gone. It's the two great climbers going one-on-one on the climb now. This is the move, and I wonder if this was the plan too. It was started at the top of Arcalys over a week ago. The team didn't like it. He said it wasn't part of the plan, but now I think it is.
Well, I tell you what, that was a savage acceleration. Armstrong now will sit here with Frank Schleck and Bradley Wiggins and see if they've got any firepower to try and nail back that acceleration. Andy Schleck was trying to ride across the gap to the man who has been touted as the best climber in the world, and today, Phil, he is giving us a little bit of a demonstration.
Well, he can do what nobody else can do. He can accelerate, settle down and kick again. Armstrong playing the faithful teammate here as he rides behind with Frank Schleck there and Bradley Wiggins and Christian van der Velde rather. But now what are they going to do? They're waiting to see what pans out now as they continue to ride up towards the summit. Look at the cool hand Luke this guy is. He just sits there and keeps his rhythm, then he kicks again.
Well, Phil, this is at 5 kilometers to go, but this race actually gets a little bit steeper at 3 kilometers to go, and that will go into the terrain there, of course, of Alberto Contador. There is Andreas Kloden coming up. He's setting the tempo now for Armstrong, followed by Frank Schleck. It's Bradley Wiggins there, and I'm not sure whether or not we've got Christian van der Velde coming across. I think we have.
Well, just look at the face here now. Kloden has come up to help Lance Armstrong there with the two riders now on the front. This is the chase by Andy Schleck trying to get on to touch with Alberto Contador. Looking for 149. He's gaining a bit today. Well, the question now being asked by the chase group. Lance Armstrong looking across, Bradley Wiggins on his back wheel, but he's done a terrific ride, there's no doubt about that. Frank Schleck will be happy because his brother's up the road trying to deal with Contador. Bit of a problem at the moment. Christian van der Velde is here, number 51, the next group down the line.
Number 11, Cadel Evans, is in that group as well. As you can see here, Alberto Contador has decided he wants to lay down the foundations of a win number 2 at the Tour de France this afternoon. Schleck is halfway across the gap, but he doesn't look quite as fluid as he did on the climb up to Arcalis. He's at 16 seconds, and I think the gap is probably going to start to stretch. Armstrong at 29, and the yellow jersey at over a minute.
I don't like the look of Andy Schleck, I'll be honest right now. I think this first day, after 2 weeks of riding away from the Pyrenees, may have altered his physique there, because he looked very, very uncomfortable. He tried to match the acceleration of Contador, and that's put him into his red zone. He's going to have to come out of that slowly.
Well, I just remember that time that we came to the Tour of Switzerland and Johan Brunel introduced us to this young man, Alberto Contador. Johan Brunel said, I have never seen a bike rider accelerate on a climb like Alberto can. Well, not only can he accelerate, but he can accelerate again and again and again. He really is phenomenal, the way that he goes up these mountains with such ease.
Well, look up the road there. He can't even see Contador at the moment, Andy Schleck. And, you know, if these boys settle down into the rhythm, Schleck might be coming back here any minute now. Frank is on the left of our picture. Cloden is setting the pace. Armstrong is there. This is the next group down with Van der Velde on the back here. And Cadel Evans off to the right as well. They've come up. They've latched on to Lance Armstrong and Bradley Wiggins and Cloden. That's a very select little group now. Well,
the 2 riders from Liquigas were the ones that we expected to be there. Roman Kreuziger, number 93, and Vincenzo Nibali was in that group. A little bit further back, Arrière de la Course. There you can see the yellow jersey is losing time. He's not losing that much time, but he is losing his yellow jersey here this afternoon.
Maxime Monfort is there for Colombia too, but I'm just wondering where Tony Martin is, the white jersey wearer, because Andy Schleck is gaining time in that competition. But this is the man who's ripping the mountain apart with 4 kilometers to go. Alberto Contador. It gets a little bit steeper as we got towards the top. Van der Velde's in trouble here, just unhitched a little bit. He's looking for more help behind.
Well, he's really struggling. Bear in mind, this man had a nasty crash in the Giro d'Italia, and he's trying to ride himself back, but this man is riding himself back. Number 1, Carlos Sastre, caught out, Phil, by the severity of the start of the climb, using his experience, not panicking, and riding himself back into this race.
So, last year's defending champion at least has got himself into the second best group on the road, but who's going to stop Contador now?
Well, I don't think anybody can stop him, because the gap is opening. 23 seconds to Schleck, 42 seconds to Armstrong, a minute 22 to the yellow jersey. Armstrong is riding phenomenally as far as I'm concerned for a man who is at 37 years of age. Alberto Contador, 21 on his back. The man who is trying to win the Tour de France for the second time is now starting to open up the gaps, and that's what's important, because he's opening up the gaps on this man who thought that he could dance with him. Team Saxo Bank tried to set it up for Andy Schleck here this afternoon, but it's 22 seconds. Schleck can almost see the Spaniard, but he can't quite catch him.
Andreas Cloden setting the pace here, but this is just a tempo. They don't want to close down on Contador. Lance Armstrong, a big test for him, but he's doing superbly at the moment.
Well, you can see here that these riders from Team Astana are still pretty much in control. They're setting the tempo in this group, and the other guys, Phil, I'd have to say, are very happy just to be passengers. Great comeback by number 1 there, Carlos Sastre. Cadel Evans has never been in difficulty so far. On the far side there, you can see Frank Schleck looking over his shoulders. He set something up for his own teammate. It's 45 seconds from Alberto Contador to the Lance Armstrong group, with caught in the middle, Andy Schleck.
3.3 kilometers to climb, and he's still dancing up the hill here. Alberto Contador being chased at 26 seconds by Schleck, 48 by the Armstrong group, and a minute 28 already now. Back to the group Maillot Jaune. Nocentini from a few seconds in front is going to be over in a minute now. This is Bradley Wiggins, and that is a smart piece of acceleration. This man is a different bike rider these days.
Well, Phil, over the last 12 months since the Beijing Olympics, he's slimmed down by 5 kilograms from August to the start of the Giro d'Italia. During the Giro d'Italia, he slimmed down a further 2 kilograms, and that makes him changes him from being a pursuiter to a climber. That was a good acceleration, but you notice how he was covered there immediately by Frank Schleck.
An offer, a bottle offered there to number 11, Cadel Evans, but Cadel Evans, it just doesn't seem to be able to lift his game here. He's in the hot group, but really, he should have been where Contador was when he made his move. Sastre, too, couldn't handle the speed at the bottom of the hill, but he's come into his own now, and he's joined this group. There he is, number 1.
Schleck has gone. Frank Schleck has now jumped across. He's trying to get across to his brother there to see whether or not he can assist him close down the gap on Alberto Contador at the front.
Now, is it age at 37 when you can't answer to the accelerations of the younger men? Maybe. But Armstrong still climbing amongst the best bike riders in the world here. And he's settled in and back with Bradley Wiggins on his shoulder. I think Frank Schleck is desperately trying to reach Andy and give him a hand here.
Well, the flags are out for all of the countries in the world over the head here of Alberto Contador, who's now inside of 3 kilometers to go. And if you look at this pedaling action he's got here, Phil, he is not weakening at all. He is opening up the gaps on everybody else in the Tour de France. The second place rider on the road is Andy Schleck here, number 31, the leader of Team Saxo Bank, and it's his own brother trying to get across to him to give him a hand.
Well, he's made the right move. He's opened the gap. Now, can he climb up? We're looking at the man who's won the stage at Alpe d'Huez here, Frank Schleck, if he can just reach. It is completely blowing apart on this climb, and the time is spread right down the mountain. There'll be no seconds at the top now. Lance Armstrong still going to be very high in the overall. Cloden is trying desperately here to keep him in the race, and Martin Brun is getting a bit upset there, the referee, as we watch here the split. And now up front, are the Schlecks going to get it together and perhaps close down a little bit on Alberto Contador?
Well, so far Contador's got 34 seconds over Andy, and I have a feeling before the top of the climb that the way Andreas Cloden is riding there, they may well pull Frank Schleck back into the fold. He's getting a little bit upset with the crowd here. They are getting very close and maybe annoying him.
They're getting a bit too close now, but he's so annoying. He's trying to hold his rhythm here and concentrate and win the lead in the Tour de France, so they don't want to hear people shouting right down his ear. But you know, it's still a good group, this. There's still a lot of riders. Cadel Evans has now moved to the front to try and lift the pace. It's only just around the corner where Frank Schleck is, still trying to reach his brother Andy.
Well, they are trying to get together to try and stop the onslaught of the Astana team train here this afternoon, because this was a well-planned attack. It really falls into the norm of a Johan Brunel tactic. Go out on the first big mountain and smack them home. This is Frank Schleck, just on the wheel of Frank Schleck. It's one of the riders from Liquigas, and Bradley Wiggins has got across there.
2 kilometers to go as the camera should pan down to find Alberto Contador about to go underneath it. 2 small kilometers. He hasn't slowed down at all. He is gaining time with every pedal rev here. Andy Schleck tried to reach him, and he hasn't quite done it, and Frank has not reached Andy Schleck yet either. Massive, massive crowd. This climb is 6 kilometers shorter than the climb of Alpe d'Huez, but the crowds on it are absolutely equal to the Alpe at the moment.
Well, this is the group that has come across from the Lance Armstrong group, because now Bradley Wiggins is hooked up there with Frank Schleck, and of course in there as well is Nibali. So they've gone away from the Lance Armstrong group at 2 kilometers to go. Andy Schleck is still looking for more than half a minute.
Well, this is the champion of Luxembourg here, chasing the time trial champion of Spain, and is riding alone, the face here of Bradley Wiggins. But he's confirmed today that he is in this race to Paris, and he is in the race for a high finish. He is one of the best riders in this league group, and he's very, very strong indeed. He's now up with Frank Schleck and Nibali, and these boys are still trying to hunt down Andy, and a counter-attack, and Sastre's gone. The start may have killed him, Paul, but he's settled back in now.
Well, it was too violent, the start of the climb for him, and it probably was a little bit too violent for Lance Armstrong at 37 years of age, and of course 3.5 years away from the top end of the sport. But Armstrong mustn't panic in a situation like this. This is only the first day of massive big days in the Alps. He's got his teammate there, Andreas Cloden, to pace him up towards the summit of this climb, and he can see these riders disappearing from him one by one. Evans there has missed the acceleration of Carlos Sastre. Never underestimate Carlos Sastre, though Those were the words that Lance Armstrong said to me, Phil, before the start of this year's Tour de France.
He goes better and better and better in the last week of any Grand Tour. This is only the first of the last week days of the Grand Tour, with a lot more mountains to come, and the finish won't always be at the top of a hill, but it will be today. This man will be out of the saddle when he comes right up to the line today. Rather a nasty kick just before it, but Alberto Contador now is establishing himself as the leader of the Astana team, and boy, when you see him climb like this, who else could there be?
He is phenomenal the way he gets out of the saddle. As soon as he feels that he's slowing down, out of the saddle he gets once again, lifts the pace up, taking it up to maximum speed, and that's what he's been dreaming of, Phil. The Flamme Rouge, 1,000 metres to go, but at around about 300 metres to go, there is an awful kick up towards the finishing line.
There is indeed, and it's going to hurt, but it won't hurt this man now. It might serve to knock a second off, but I doubt it. Somehow there's a nice close-up of his name on the back of his number 21. Lance Armstrong has been looked after here on the latter part of the climb by Andreas Kloden, and I would say the Astana team are racing into the team lead tonight. The team is decided on the times of the first 3 riders of the team. So Contador, Armstrong and Kloden, that would the way it will be.
Contador now inside of the last of 600 or 700 metres. Chasing him on the road is one man in second position, Andy Schleck, number 31, the leader of Team Saxo Bank. They tried to set it up for this man, but they could do nothing when Alberto Contador came out of that pack. It was an amazing acceleration for this man, but he's kept it going all of the time. He's continued to build his advantage over everybody else.
Well, this is Andy Schleck. He's riding in second place now. About 44 seconds he's lost so far to Contador. Then we have Frank Schleck, Bradley Wiggins and Vincenzo Nibali. They are chasing a little bit further back, but this hill has hit so hard by these boys. It was so difficult to get a wheel. They've hit it so fast, and Sastre took a while to get into the swing of it, but he's doing it now.
Well, Sastre is going to climb up in the overall standings. Armstrong is defending here this afternoon. He hasn't really lost all that much when you look at the riders who he is racing with, Phil, and bear in mind he was 3.5 years away from the top end of the sport. He's doing fairly admirably.
He'll still be right up in the overall, because to Lance Armstrong to Contador is still only just over 1 minute, 1 minute and 20 seconds. So Armstrong can still climb with the best riders in the world. This was a plan I think Astana had. They wouldn't reveal it to us, but we know it now. And really, at the end of the day, if the race came to the bottom together, they had to attack. Look at the crowd here watching the best climber in the world come home. This is a terrific sight for Alberto Contador. He had his wings clipped in the Pyrenees, but he's found them again in the Alps for sure.
Well, he certainly has, and this, I think, is definitely a Johan Bruneel tactic. They waited for this. He wouldn't reveal anything this morning, the Belgian tactician. This is what they were thinking about. They were going to come out on this big mountain stage and lay down the law, and this is what they have certainly done.
And that's the corner which really hurts. It doesn't look like it, but he's got up on it now. He's sat back in the saddle. I've got it, he says. Here we go. There's the pistol shot. Alberto Contador's over the line. He's the next maillot jaune of the Tour de France. The time gaps will start now. Here comes Andy Schleck, the champion of Luxembourg. He's establishing a podium finish in Paris for sure. It may not be first place after what we've seen today.
He will also be looking at the white jersey for the best young rider as well, because he's ridden away from Tony Martin on the slopes of this climb up here to Verbier, but he got a bit of a shock when Alberto Contador came out of the pack. This is a very brutal finish here, this last 200-300 metres. He'll be looking at that corner, hoping to reach this last little bit of flat to the finish line.
And look at the clock counting away as well. He's going to come up to the line about 42, 43 seconds afterwards. So he actually closed a little bit on Contador. Here's the race now. Nibali has just eased himself away. Wiggins could finish off a terrific performance today as Nibali, that's why Liquigas worked. He's racing up, and Sastre is going to go for the 4th place as Nibali goes in at 62 seconds. Sastre comes in. No, it's not. It's Frank Schleck, followed by Wiggins, followed by Sastre.
And here is
now
Lance
comes home.
Well, this is a great defending ride by Lance Armstrong here. Just bear in mind how old this man is. He's 37 years of age. He's staring 38 at the end of this year in September with his teammate just in front of him. Cadel Evans comes across the line there to lose himself 1:25. Andreas Kloden is next in at 1:28. And there is Armstrong. Not a bad performance, Lance.
No, not a bad performance at all. Lance Armstrong gave his best there.
And so did Ronaldo Nocentini, but neither of them will be in the yellow jersey tomorrow. This morning's race leader finished a creditable 19th, already having taken more from this tour than he could have hoped for. There's the results. Alberto Contador first, 43 seconds ahead of Andy Schleck and 103 ahead of Vincenzo Nibali. 3 seconds behind him, a trio of riders was led home by Frank Schleck, with Bradley Wiggins a brilliant 5th and Carlos Sastre 6th. Cadel Evans was 7th at a minute 26th, just ahead of Andreas Klurden, who shepherded Lance Armstrong up most of the final climb. Armstrong himself came in 9th, a minute 35 down. Tony Martin in the Best Young Riders jersey was 12th at 2:13, 7 places and 23 seconds ahead of Nocentini. Now, riding in the mountains with the best in the world is one thing. Attacking them on a final climb was new territory for Bradley Wiggins, but he made it look like his natural habitat. He spoke to Ned.
You've recovered now. You buried yourself on that climb, didn't you? But what a performance.
Yeah, it was phenomenal, you know. It really was. It was. I emptied the tank, you know. I tried my hardest, and fortunately it was enough, you know. And to be climbing with those guys, you know, and this was a real showdown. You know, we're 2 weeks in now. Some people might have said that both together, sorry. But some people might have said Andorra was a fluke, you know, a week into the bike race, but. And myself, you know, proved to myself that, you know, less than a week ago now, and I was right up there with the best of them, so delighted.
At the foot of that climb, we saw 2 of your teammates go to the front, so that was a clear message of intent that you weren't going to ride up that mountain defensively. It was aggressive defence, wasn't it?
I said to the boys this morning, you know, just make sure we hit the front of that climb in the front, because I didn't want to get boxed, or I knew that they would be pretty flat out from the bottom, and I didn't want to be making that effort 20 riders back. I wanted to be there right in the action, and I did, you know. It was absolutely, when CSC were on the front, Fabian, I was right behind Fabian, and he was burying himself, and I it was touch and go for a while. I was going to nearly pull the pin, but I kept telling myself, one more minute. And the guys behind, I knew if I was hurting, they're going to be hurting, so you keep telling myself that. And I looked round, and the group come together, and Sastre was on his knees, Cadel, and I thought, God, you know, here we are, Tour de France, these boys are... And I dropped to the back of the group a bit, and just thought I'd try my luck, and Nibali went, and I thought it was a time to go with him, so it was great. I had Matt White in my ear the whole time, telling me that you got him on the ropes, and I just kept pushing, and it was great, it really was.
I'm going to give you 3 numbers and 3 names now. 1 Contador, 2 Armstrong, 3 Wiggins in GC.
Yeah, I mean, Contador is the best rider, and I didn't even try and go with Contador. I'm not going to try me luck that much, you know. I wanted to defend the position I was in without taking too many risks. And Andy went, and I saw Andy couldn't get onto Contador at all, so I thought, well, let Andy go. Then Lance didn't quite know what to do, and Lance is so good at this playing poker, you know, you never really know how he is. So, I mean, I rode fearlessly. So.
Well, listen, unless that was a huge bluff from Lance, you've got the measure of him in the mountains now, and as a time trialist.
That's the hardest stage for me, because it's a summit finish. Everyone gives their all, and you really see where everyone's at. Rest day tomorrow. Then we got the 2 tough days in the Alps, which I prefer because they're not summit finishes, so it's kind of like that niggly tempo all day, really, and following the attacks in the final. But the time gaps are sufficient now, and then once we get to Annecy on Thursday, Wiggins in his element, so we're gonna go out there and, you know, 1080 on the front, zip wheel, whatever the CTT say, and just get on with it, and we'll have a beer afterwards and celebrate.
There'll be beer all round if Bradley's on the podium in Paris. If it's the second step, there might be chasers too. Favourite for the top step and on the podium in Verbier tonight, Alberto Contador, new leader of the race, and at the admission of Lance Armstrong, finally leader of his own team.
Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. It's been so long since we had a finish like this. This was as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, this was a lot harder than Andorra, and it's been 4 years since we did something like that. So going in, I was unsure. I felt good leading up to it, but that high-end stuff, as I said this morning, I might be missing, and you know, I'd give myself a B-, I guess.
Do you think your chances for winning the Tour now are over?
Yeah, it'll be hard. I mean, it's you know, a day like this really shows who's the best, and you know, I wasn't on par with what's required to win the Tour. So, I mean, for me, that's the reality. That's not devastating news or anything.
Do you think you've won the Tour de France today?
Que si piensas que has ganado hoy.
No, yo creo que hoy se ha dado un paso importante, pero queda muchísimo, queda la última semana va a ser muy difícil.
Well, it is a very difficult last week, but Alberto Contador currently has 1:37 on a man who's conceded to him in Lance Armstrong, and Armstrong has Bradley Wiggins breathing down his neck, just 9 seconds behind in third. Andres Klöden is fourth, then comes Andy Schleck, the new leader of the Best Young Rider competition, and perhaps the biggest threat still to Contador. He's 2:26 down in fifth, ahead of Rinaldo Nocentini, Vincenzo Nibali and Tony Martin. Andy's brother Frank Schleck is 10th, 3:25 down, 1 place ahead of Carlos Sastre, who's at 3:52. Christian van der Velde is 12th, over 2 minutes down now on his teammate Bradley Wiggins, and Cadel Evans trails by nearly 4.5 minutes. He's 14th.